The original inspiration behind Cleave to the Black starts at a point of anger. This constant attack on the black body. A couple of years ago, I'm thinking back to the times when we were seeing Mike Brown and also what was happening in this country at the time with Rashan Charles, Mosey Muhammad. For me, it's not just about sitting with the pain of those images. On one side, we had the pain of those images. I'm also thinking about the images that I see of joy and of freeness and movement and expressivity that we see on social media with the black body. And now I'm questioning what exists in between those two spaces and what holds us in that space and what stops us from getting to this space. You live in this weird space of being invisible and hyper-visible all at the same time. I wanted to think about what happens if all of that is put to the side. We move through the stairs, we leave behind our heaviness. We step into the center screen, we think about the possibilities and the freedoms to move with this effortless grace through this landscape. And then we're now able to sit in our last space, kind of final resting place, which is rest. To be able to rejuvenate and to rest fully. As a community worker, as a youth worker, I spend a lot of my time with young people. One of the first things that we decided that we were going to do was to build a community within this project itself. Yes, we could have asked the participants come in on the day and perform, but what we wanted to do was to create these series of workshops. How do we connect an emotion? How do we connect a story to the actions that we're going to ask them to do? And by doing that, by asking them to give a part of themselves to the performance, to the project, it brought an authenticity to the movements, to the space and to the position that they held. And I'm hoping in some way a kind of a form of ownership over what they were doing as well. One of the things that we spoke about, one of the things that we worked on is what does it feel like to move in your body, right? So going back to the workshops again, we're now connecting this to the stories of when did it feel heavy to move in your body? Frantz Fanon speaks about wanting to move with effortless grace, right? Wanting to come live and young into the world. And that's what that screen represents. It's the stopping us from moving in the way that we want to. What kind of baggage, what holds us down? You know, why do we have to move so slowly? Center screen is this kind of unfolding images of a landscape. What the unfolding is a question of possibilities. There's a poem by Dennis Smith called A Summer Somewhere. And within that poem, there's a line that says, what would it feel like to live on a land that loves you back? What would it feel like to live in this space, to live on this land that loves you the same way that you love it? Now, the land doesn't reject you anymore. And is it possible? Then how might it look? Sleep is a call to rest. I was looking at the bodies almost in this place of, is it life or is it death? And as the project continued, there was a few words that we wanted to move away from. And I think death and trauma was one of those, right? And we replaced death with the idea of resting and slowness. Commenting on somebody else's comment of black people moving at the tempo of emergency, always being this really fast-paced because you never quite know what's around the corner. Looking at rest as almost this revolutionary act. Right? Think about how fast we have to move in our lives and how to be able to rest and not have that be associated with tiredness, right? It's a very different thing to own that space, that stillness. We're asking you to look, and to look closely, right? We're asking you to look beyond the point where it's comfortable. What lies beyond the places where we're comfortable? And this is what slowness has allowed us to do. Slowness has allowed us to do that. It has allowed us to question what are the other possibilities? What else are we capable of once everything around us just starts to slow down? The title was taken from a saying that is attributed to Paul Bogle. Paul Bogle was a preacher in Jamaica and led or was a part of the Morant Bay uprising in 1865. Now, the line "Cleave to the Black" was said that as the Jamaicans marched down to the courtyard area, demanding access to land, access to food, access to certain types of medication and healthcare, that "Cleave to the Black" is what was said as they walked towards it. "Cleave to the Black" was the statement that Paul Bogle, upon his arrest, right, for leading this uprising, asked those who attempted to capture him to say this statement: "Cleave to the black, cleave to the black, cleave to the white." And there's something about that line. And I think the reason why it stayed with me is because you're asking to cleave from something. Then what are you asking to attach to next? And that's what the project's title is about. For me, it's important to always mention the people that I worked, especially the ones that I worked closely with on the project. And for me, it starts with Toby. Toby was the producer on the project, has kept this project going. And how do we make sure that what we start with, we don't lose as we get to the end? And Giovanni played a huge role in this project as well as a cinematographer. And we had a lot of conversations about the visual language too. So we spoke about sonic language with Ashley, but with the visual language, right? How do we record slowness? Shooting on 16mm, how do we approach the limitations when they happen? Tristan was our movement coach. Having somebody in the space who works in that environment as a theatre practitioner was able to help drag out these stories, was able to create an environment where when we started to experiment and bring in the stories, everybody felt comfortable enough to kind of take it on. It's the community of makers and how we're working collaboratively to kind of bring this project forward.